Well, howdy partners, it's your old buddy the Reddit Rider, and welcome back to the Reddit Ranch. Why don't y'all come in and sit a spell, 'cause I got some mighty fine tales to tell. Our first story is from a cowpoke who planned a romantic getaway for him and his filly, that is until his adult daughter invited herself and her husband and their kids of course.
AITA for abandoning my daughter on vacation? My wife and I have always dreamed of celebrating our 40th anniversary with a luxurious vacation. Just the two of us, reliving the romance of our early years. We had it all planned out for years now and were excited beyond words. Enter our adult daughter Jane. Jane and her husband got wind of our plans and promptly invited themselves and their two children, a 9-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son, alone. I originally put my foot down and told them this trip was just for us, which upset her some. But my wife has a hard time saying no to Jane, as she is the youngest of our children and our only daughter, and she didn't want to hurt her feelings, so she reluctantly agreed to let them join. I wasn't thrilled about it at the time, but I wanted to make my family happy, and I knew my wife was also okay with the idea of a family trip even if she was heartbroken we wouldn't get our romantic trip. We went along with it. The place we were originally going was not child-friendly, so we changed course and decided on an all-inclusive family-friendly resort. We paid for the resort and our grandchildren's plane tickets. Jane and her husband only had to pay for their own airfare. Here's where things get complicated. As the vacation got closer, I started having a change of heart. I realized that our 40th anniversary was a once-in-a-lifetime milestone, and I wanted to honor it in a way that was true to our original plans. My wife and I might not be able to afford a trip like this again for quite some time, and it's something we always wanted to do. So, without consulting anyone, I switched our tickets last minute to go to the romantic destination that my wife and I had originally planned for. I did not tell Jane or her husband. I didn't even tell my wife until the day before our flight left, which was a day before Jane's flight left for their vacation. It wasn't an easy decision and I feel guilty about it. But I wanted our 40th anniversary to be the special, intimate celebration we had always hoped for. We called Jane after we landed to tell her, and she was extremely upset to say the least. She seemed to have the idea that we were going to look after our grandkids so she and her husband could have alone time, and now that I abandoned her they would have to do it all themselves. I hung up on them when my son-in-law started shouting and my wife and I enjoyed the rest of our trip. They came back the same day we did but have not answered any of our texts, and Jane seems to be ignoring me. My wife told me she vastly preferred our trip to the family trip we would have taken, but she still doesn't like how Jane is mad at us and wants me to apologize. I'm not sure I want to after learning Jane and her husband were using us for free babysitting and a free trip, but I feel like I should just to keep the peace. Am I the AH for changing our trip destination last minute and leaving Jane and her family to fend for themselves?
Wait a second partner, you've been married for 40 years? Wow. Forget the vacation, you deserve a medal. Anyway, you ain't a varmint. After 40 years you and your wife deserve to have a romantic getaway. And Jane deserves, well, to pay for her own babysitter. Could be worse, y'all could have sent Jane a series of postcards saying, "Glad you're not here." Well now, I plumb reckon they would have had to travel a pretty long way just to babysit. Anyway partners, what do y'all think? Do you think he was in the right? Or do you think Jane has every reason to be upset? Share your thoughts down below. Next we have one that involves a little lady who doesn't want to go out for dinner with her boyfriend's parents if his parents insist on inviting his ex-wife. Gee, it's not like that would be awkward or anything.
AITA for refusing to have dinner with my BF's parents if his ex-wife's gonna be there? My boyfriend and I are both 28, and I got with my boyfriend about 3 years ago. When we met, he had just gotten divorced, and we officially started dating a year later. His ex-wife doesn't like me. She made it clear from day one, and I'm not blaming her or anything. I never got divorced, or married for that matter, so I don't know what's the appropriate amount of time to date after a divorce. His parents are still very fond of her and often invites her for dinner. That means that we often have to see her when we're going over to his parents. The issue is that she makes it obvious she doesn't like me and always throws little digs at me. I told my boyfriend and he talked with her, and she promised she'll try to be more civil, and she is more civil, but I can always feel her looking distastefully at me, so I'm often uncomfortable. Anyways, his parents invited us for dinner last Friday, but his ex-wife was gonna be there too, so I told them that even though I've liked them, I wouldn't be there if she was because I'm uncomfortable. They weren't happy, they called me petty and manipulative, they said his ex-wife was always gonna be a part of their life, and they felt like I was trying to get rid of her. It obviously wasn't my intention. I've tried to explain, but they didn't care. My boyfriend also tried to talk to them, but they didn't care either. My boyfriend still went, I've told him to, and apparently, they said they won't invite me anymore since I don't appreciate the invite. I'm so confused because it's not the outcome I thought it'd be. I thought they'd understand and invite us when his ex-wife isn't there too. So now I'm wondering if I maybe overreacted and should just get that if I want a good relationship with his parents, I also have to accept his ex-wife.
No ma'am, you ain't a varmint. You didn't say whether or not they had youngings, so I'll assume they don't, which means there is only one reason they do this, and that is to hurt you. Maybe they would like their son to reconnect with her or something. I reckon the best course of action in this here situation is for your boyfriend to draw a hard line with his folks. He truly needs to just tell his parents that not only don't you want to have anything to do with his ex, but neither does he. And if there ain't no kids involved, then there ain't no real reason to have anything to do with her anyway. And he needs to tell them that if she's at the restaurant or their house, then not only will you not go there, but neither will he. And if he's unwilling to do that, then I'm afraid it won't end with you. What I mean is, say, for argument's sake, that you get fed up with this situation and decide to leave. Well, eventually, he'll meet someone else, and they'll just do this again, and again. Well now, I reckon her boyfriend's parents has it in their heads that their son and his ex can get back together, and that can end up hurting everyone concerned. But what do y'all think, partners? Let me know in their comments. Our next story was posted by a filly that is having a pretty intense problem with her mother-in-law.
My mother-in-law tried to ruin my marriage and my relationship with my daughter. I just found out from my daughter that my mother-in-law has been telling her all kinds of horrible things about me. They talked every night before my daughter went to bed, and I never worried about it because who would? Well, I caught my daughter going through my phone, and when I confronted her, she didn't want to tell me why she went through it. This behavior is completely unlike her. So I had a feeling that something was going on. When I asked her what she was looking for, she said, "I wanted to see if you're messing around." So then I asked her why she would feel that way, and she refused to tell me why. Well, fast forward a day and she comes downstairs for breakfast visibly upset. So I ask her what's wrong, and she says, "If I tell you, will I get in trouble?" To which I responded, "Well, it depends on what you're telling me." She then proceeds to word vomit all over the place and completely melts down crying, saying that her grandma told her to go through my phone and has been telling her that I am narcissistic and mean, and her son chose the wrong woman to marry. We need to divorce, and that I was probably messing around on her dad. She even asked my daughter to send pictures of my text messages to her. So I am furious. So I promptly message her exactly what I was thinking, and she decides to turn it around on me, saying, "Well, imagine how I am feeling. I'm having a hard time too." What the fudge? I blocked her on all my kids' devices. I told my husband we will not be associating with her because she is clearly unhinged, and that's not something I want our kids to be around.
Holy cow patties, ma'am. All my mother-in-law does to my kids is bake them cookies, but yours is trying to turn her into some kind of ninja. Your mother-in-law is truly disgusting and should be ashamed of herself. She may have thought she was only hurting you, but what she was actually doing was tearing her granddaughter apart. You did a good job in protecting your daughter. Now, there was a lot of comments, a lot asking what her hubby thought of all this. To this, she posted a reply. He was furious. He hasn't spoken to her since it happened, even though she has tried several times to reach out to him. He said he would talk to her eventually, but right now he is staying far away from her. Well, ma'am, I am truly overjoyed that you and your hubby is on the same page. But, What's y'all's opinions on this story, partners? How do y'all get along with y'all's in-laws? Let me know down below. Our last story is by a tenderfoot that wants to know if he's a varmint just because he told his son that it was his son's fault that they were getting a divorce. Wow, looks like we have a candidate for Father of the Year right here.
AITA for telling my son that he is the reason me and his mother are getting divorced? I know upon reading the title alone, many of you will just call me an AH, and you might be right, but I want to explain myself first. My wife and I have been together when we first met in high school. We were able to maintain a long-distance relationship throughout college and stayed true to each other. I truly thought we were inseparable. She gave birth to a boy 12 years ago, and since then things changed drastically. My son unfortunately has behavioral problems, and it's been very difficult raising him. He throws temper tantrums, gets in trouble in school frequently, refuses to listen to my wife and me. As a result, my wife and I started having disagreements about how we should handle him, i.e., whether to punish more, let him get his anger out, etc. This created a wedge between us that kept getting wider. We both resorted to drinking more and wanting to be away from each other as much as possible to get some relief. We started having more arguments, and eventually it became so obvious that our marriage was deteriorating that family members started questioning it. So the topic of divorce came up and we both decided to go through with it. When I first told my son about it, he cried endlessly, then started throwing fits about how unfair it was. I completely understand that a divorce is hard on any child, but the intensity of his fits kept growing. Since my wife and I are separated, not yet divorced, and because she can't tolerate our son that much, we agreed that he gets to spend most of the week with me, unfortunately. So I see him a lot and have to put up with his yelling far more than she does. Last Friday he started asking if my wife and I forgave each other, and I told him that the divorce is happening, like it or not. He starts crying and I got mad and told him, "Buddy, want to know why we are getting divorced? Because of you. We were happy before you were born, but you always act bad and get in trouble, so stop arguing with me when you caused it. You have nothing but yourself to blame." This devastated him and I did apologize, but I told him there was some truth to what I said. However, since then he's been more quiet and behaved. Even my wife, who was with him over the weekend, said he was much better. So yes, I think I am the AH for telling him he was the reason we are getting divorced, but in some ways I don't think I am, because maybe it was just something he needed to hear?
Well, son, I'd say that we should talk father to father, but, seeing how you're not a real father, I guess we can't. As for your question, well, sometimes calling someone a varmint ain't an insult, it's just an accurate description. I mean, did you ever stop to think that maybe, just maybe, how your son acts may not be entirely his fault? He could have ADHD, or something like that, but you wouldn't know because you never got him checked out. You figured it was easier just to give up on him. And just in case you think I'm just talking from the outside, and I don't know what I'm talking about, my daughter has ADHD. Did we blame her for it? No. Did we blame each other? No. Did we hate her for it? No. We got her help. That is what parents are supposed to do. Well now, I gotta feel sorry for this kid. To have parents like he's got has gotta be rough. Anyway, what do y'all reckon, partners? Do y'all think he's a varmint or not? Let me know what you think down below. Well, partners, I do plumb reckon that it's time for this good old boy to ride off into the sunset. But if y'all enjoyed y'all's time at the Reddit Ranch, then I'd thank y'all kindly to hit like and subscribe. It'll really make this old cowboy smile. Until the next time we meet, adios.